How's everybody doing tonight? Let me I already struggle streaming a little bit. Let's see, get that in there. I need to go ahead and hook up one of my other monitors. Let's see. Let's share. Get that going. Give people time. What's up, Mr. Whitlock? Glad you can join me. Thanks for giving me that one. Hopefully you're having a good day. Going to talk about Amazon Simple Storage S3. Hey, out getting bar food. I'll be back to the command center. Okay, that'll work. Appreciate you. You know how we do it. If you got any tech questions or cybersecurity questions, just drop them in the chat. Let me peek on my LinkedIn a little bit, and we'll get rolling. Man, I'm glad it's hump day. Let's see, get a little welcome going on LinkedIn. And we'll get started. Give people time to flow in. Why is it called simple if you need a diagram? Well, that's more than the simple part. That's an architectural diagram, but that's an excellent question. So, a lot of times we use log files. So I just want to, because I want to start going over security architectural diagrams as part of GRC. I think you need to understand architects and encryption, TLS, where file movements are. We talk about data flow diagrams and how they move through system architecture. So I just want to start moving into the system diagrams a little bit. But always an excellent question. I think Simple Storage was one of the first things Amazon created. That's one of their first services when they first got started, making it easier for people to hold files on the cloud because this space was so incredibly expensive back then. So that's what we're going to hit today. Amazon Simple Storage as a GRC person, you need to understand different services in the cloud. I'm sure Azure has their version of that, and Google has their version. So there's a lot of similarity. So that's one reason I actually picked that. And once again, starting to get back into AWS a little more, working on that skill set. So let's keep rolling. So what is S3? It's a simple storage services, an object storage service offering industry-leading scalability, data availability, and security and performance. Millions of customers, all sizes and industry, store, manage, and analyze and protect any amount of data for virtually any use case, such as data lakes. I highlighted data lakes because we're going to use that as an example at the end. Somebody actually asked me a question on Discord, so we're going to use that using S3 and data lakes to kind of handle that particular question. Cloud native application, mobile apps. With is a cost-effective storage classes, easy to use management features. You can optimize costs, organize, analyze data, and configure fine-tune access controls to meet specific compliance requirements, business and compliance requirements. So S3 is highly used. So this is what we're going to talk about later at the end. Somebody was asking me about log files. So those are actually EC2. They got log files. They save their log files on S3. On S3, you got a product called Amazon Athena. It helps you query those log files with Amazon Glue, kind of gives you the data structure. You take those events, you can actually put them in cloud events and create dashboards and alarms, or you could just create easy to use reports in Amazon Athena. So, long story short, somebody asked, if you were a small company, you had to do a SIM, and part of the SIM was correlating data, running reports, or creating dashboards. I say put it on S3, and we're going to dig into that. So, what would that look like on S3? Kind of make it a data lake. So, what we're about to do now is go over features that are on S3. One of those being a data lake, but there's a ton of other basic features on it. So, that's what we're going to do: hit those features and kind of run through those from a really a GRC perspective. So once again, if y'all have any questions, just put them in the chat, or just give a shout out or happy hump day. So that's kind of what we're going to do. Once again, kind of walk through the features, basically from a GRC compliance standpoint, then kind of roll that into if you needed to design something for that, aka log kind of repository to kind of check the compliance box. Once again, what would that look like? So that's me on LinkedIn. If you need to reach out to me, I need to put up a new picture. So once again, Amazon S3 stores data and objects within buckets. An object is a file and any metadata that describes the file. A bucket is a container for the object. To store data in S3, you can create a bucket and specify a bucket name and an AWS region. Then you upload your data in a bucket as an object in S3. Each object has a key or key name which relates to it. S3 provides features that you can configure to support specific use cases. You can use S3 versioning, keeping multiple version copies, which allows you to restore if you accidentally deleted something. Buckets and objects in them are private and can only be accessed with explicitly granted access permissions. You can use bucket policies, AWS identity, and AIM. We're going to talk about that, S3 access points, and also access control lists to manage objects. Right? A lot of people don't use ACLs anymore. They use the policies to control those. Because then you can put a policy in a group, and in that group, of course, you can assign people to that group, and you can have consistent. What's up, Game Over? Glad you could join me. You can have consistent access to your S3 bucket. Oh, that's the wrong one. Let's keep going. So this is got this off of Amazon site. So at a high level, you can have a server, user, client, batch job. You can do analytics of data. We're going to talk about log files, application data, video and pictures, backup and archive. You move your data to Amazon S3 from wherever it lives in the cloud, and application and on-prem. So once you put it in the S3 bucket, it stores the data. Once again, specifies the region, access control, upload any amount of data. Then with that, once again, you can control access to the data, optimize costs with storage classes. So when you put up there, we're going to look at it. There's different storage classes, and you pay more or less. Once again, we're going to talk about log files. So you can put in Glacier. You start paying pennies for terabytes, but it might take you 12 hours to get that data back, right? So we definitely going to look at the classes of data storage and kind of figure out what's best for the best product for the best price. Replicate data to any region, access from on-prem or VPC, protect and secure your data, gain visibility into your storage. Then out of the S3, you can use it for AI, advanced analytics, machine learning, use it for third-party services. So S3 is used for a lot of different use cases, especially once again from that object storage. And Amazon, once again, set it up. Once you put it on S3, you can query it, use other products, put it in different databases, put it in different warehouses, store it there as a data lake in its raw form. So once again, S3 is, I guess, a cornerstone product. So shout out to Larry. Glad you for joining us. Once again, if you got any questions, put them in the chat. We'll definitely be dropping a link if you want to come up Just going to talk a little bit about AWS, definitely from a GRC and compliance standpoint, what things can use this service for, and what things are popular about it. Once again, Amazon S3 Access Grant maps identities to directories such as Active Directory or AWS Identity Management to data sets in S3. This helps you manage data permission at scale by automatically granting S3 access to the end users based on their corporate identity. Additionally, S3 access grant logs end users' identity application to access S3 data in AWS Cloud Trail. It helps to provide a detailed audit history breakdown to the end user's identity for all access to the data in your S3 bucket. So since you're putting raw data on there, you could have FTI, PII, different type of data classification. What it's saying is you have a detailed audit. Okay, so where did it go? Who access to it? If somebody stole it, right? You have a detailed log of it went out the VPC, it went to this IP address, somebody stole our data, right? At least you would have that log and you can trace it, right? So that's kind of one reason people like S3, once again, you got detailed log, and that's why a lot of people use it for logging, right? You need logs about your logs. So that's how that metadata works. So S3 Access Point is a feature simplified data access to AWS customer applications that store data. With S3 Access Points, customers can create a unique access control policy for each access point to easily control the data. Customers with shared data sets, including data lakes, media archives, and user-generated content, can easily scale access for hundreds of applications by creating individual access points with name and permissions to customize for each application. So I thought I'd put a picture of that. So what that will look like is going to your S3 bucket, you would have a policy and you kind of breaking that down into the directories. So I could have a artificial intelligence bucket directory, AI bucket, data lake bucket. Then with that access point, I can say what applications can read inside those directories in the bucket. So I don't have to give access to each individual file or directory. That access point will give me permissions to drill down into that bucket. So that's kind of where that is. I need to tighten up on my slides a little bit. But once again, if you got any questions, we're just going through S3, some of the features of S3, and we're going to actually talk about a poor man's SIM and logging at the end. Once again, somebody asked me a question in Discord, and we're going to kind of run through a S3 project on that. So S3 batch operations is managed solutions for performing access, like copying, tagging objects at scale, whether for a one-time task or recurring batch workloads. The S3 batch operation can perform action across billions of objects, petabytes of data in a single request. To perform work in S3 batch operation, you will have to create a job. The job consists of lists of objects and the actions to perform, set parameters for those type of operation. You can create and run multiple jobs at the same time in batch operations and use job priorities as a need to define the precedence of each job. So if you look at the bottom, they were kind of talking about that. So Amazon S3, you can specify target objects using S3 inventory or a CSV file. In the S3 console, you can select an API and pre-populate that. Once again, you can fire up a copying objects between buckets from S3 Glacier. We're going to talk about storage class. Or you can fire up a lambda, which is basically a function or procedure and what you want to do for that. You can actually transcode images, but from a GRC perspective, data that comes in, we can have IRS data or CMC data. We can actually put tags on there. We want to tag in. Our data in here actually came from the IRS, so we could tag it. This came for CMC, which is DOD. So why would you want to tag your objects? Then we can start putting security requirements on those tags for those objects. So as we load them in, once again, you see that in orange, the Amazon S3 batch operations. Actions are made to target S3 objects. So once again, as we load objects in our data lake, we could tag this type of data for them. We could say, tag this type. How do we know that data? Those batches are coming in from the IRS, from DOD. from PCI. So we know where that data is coming from. So once again, we could tag it, and those tags could help once again with our compliance. Because part of that big deal is tagging data, which is sometimes super hard. So since we know where those data sources are coming from with S3 batch operations, we will want to tag our data. And once again, we could put security requirements on those tags as we put them in the S3 bucket. Then we can start putting stuff like this is a DoD file. It can't go to this particular application or VPC because it's at a lower class. So we could flag it and say, hey, if you need this data, you need to do it in this environment. Right? So you can start putting controls on data, security classifications on data, and hopefully in the future we'll start running some labs on that. So that's kind of things you would do with S3 batch operations. Once again, we're just going to hit some of the S3 batch functions and how that would look and how we would use that. S3 public access, we blocking it, controls access to an entire AWS account as individual S3 bucket level to ensure objects never have public access now in the future. You see that highlighted, turn on block all public access at the account level. So what that means is your S3 bucket, you can actually give it access to the internet. Then to the internet, you can actually have outside clients use that bucket and have access to those particular objects. So what we're saying is, no, we want that internal. We don't want anybody from the internet. So you would have to log into our VPC, then we would have to give you permissions from an account we own and control. Right. So block out public access. You see that right there at the bucket level, the account level. Block out public access granted by new ACLs. Block out public access granted by any ACL. Block public access granted by new bucket policies. Block public and cross-account access by any public bucket policies. Then right there, audit your S3 apples and policies. You can use Trusted Advisor and it'll give you a link. So once again, people were actually, I wouldn't even say getting hacked. They were actually given access to S3 buckets on the internet, and people were just coming taking that data because they didn't understand the permissions they were doing. So AWS makes it super easy for you now. It says block out public access, right? Meaning you need an internal account controlled by you, controlled by your bucket or your account level to get access. Once again, Congress was actually beating AWS up about that, saying you got to do more to protect your clients and protect them from themselves. Shout out to Tim Chrisman for joining us with the I. Shout out to my man Ty for joining us. Shout out to Casual Economist for joining. If you have any questions, tech or cybersecurity, Brock, just drop them in the chat. We'll be dropping down a link. Once again, from a GRC perspective, we will be going over the Amazon services, talking about them from a tech perspective, what you should be looking for from a GRC perspective, so you can have intelligent conversations with the cloud engineers, right? So none of this will be, so a lot of times as the senior compliance director, and one of the security checks are you blocking our public access? Nobody from the internet should be able to get from this bucket, right? So if they don't have this on, right, that would be a finding for me. Then we could talk to engineering, ask them, why is this open to the internet? So we won't be looking like everybody else and getting hacked and getting big fines, right? We don't want that, right? So let's keep rolling. Like I said, we're just going to touch on the service. Optimizing storage using S3. Save with cost-efficient storage classes. That's what we're going to talk about. And lifecycle management tools. Amazon S3 Intelligent Tiering stores classes designed to optimize storage by automatically moving data to the most cost-effective access tier. So when you have an object, you can say use intelligent tiering. So if you're not using it, you see it right there. Frequently assets tier up objects uploaded in S3. Intelligent tier stores for frequent use. After 30 days, object are not accessed for 30 days. It moves it to archive instant access tier. Objects not accessed for 90 days. So obviously it's cheaper in that tier, but that tier is a little slower, and sometimes it might take a couple hours for you to get it back. So a lot of times when we do compliance, we're having in that tier, and we're actually about to look at, I think it's 6 tiers. So data retrieval in milliseconds automatically tries to save costs. So we're going to look at those different tiers coming up. Another one is a mount point, access elastic storage through Amazon S3, like a file interface, kind of like FileZilla if you ever use one of those. Amazon has an S3 open source file clients that let you mount to the S3 bucket on a computer instance and access it as if it was a local file system. So a lot of times you have programs using the S3 like it's a local file system. It's saving documents there, deleting documents there. Behind the scenes, it's using the API REST calls on all those S3 objects. But once again, you can use it like a program. It's high performance. You don't have to use those commands. You could just use your regular commands, and your program can upload, delete, modify, copy, move, all that good stuff, right? So it accesses the bucket as if it was a local file system. Some things using it that needs that type of speed is large scale machine learning training, autonomous vehicles in simulation, genomics, and image rendering. Those are some of the things that we use mount point for Amazon S3. Amazon S3 Object Lambda adds your own code to S3 Git list. And a Lambda is basically a function. It could be Java, Rust, REST. So about 4 or 6 programs. So if you need custom programming, you do it there. So when you upload it, then it fire your Lambda out. Then your Lambda can do something to that. As you see there at the bottom, creates and configure an S3 object access point. Make a request to a S3 object Lambda, get head or list request, process and transform the S3 object. Lambda will process the object on get head or list request to meet the needs of your application. That is returned to your application, process the data in the application without the need to store a copy in S3. So those are some of the features you could use. Once again, just touching on those features from a GRC perspective, we know what those are and basically how to secure those and the which things we should use at the right time. So from a GRC perspective, this is definitely one of the functions. Amazon S3 Object Lock, data protection from ransomware events with object level immutability to protect objects from accidentally or maliciously deleted and overwrites an S3 object. It blocks the permanent object deletion during a customer-defined retention period so that it can enforce retention policy as an added layer of data protection, or for our favorite, for regulatory compliance. With the S3 object lock, S3 version is automatically enabled, meaning you can delete a version, you can always go back. And these features works together to prevent locked objects versions from being permanently deleted, accidentally or intentionally. Overwrite using the write once, read many worm type of things. And you see the thing, the diagram at the bottom. Create an S3 bucket and enable S3 object locks. The S3 object locks prevents objects from being deleted or overwritten for a fixed amount of time or indefinitely. Governance mode, only users with special permissions can override or delete those. Compliance mode, no users, including the root user in AWS, can overwrite, delete, or alter object locks. So a lot of times we might have FOIA requests or emails we have to keep for 25 years, or FTI, which is federal tax information, we have to keep for 7 years. So we put that lock on with the retention period. Then that legal hold to object version are protected and definitely cannot be deleted until the legal hold is removed. Objects are prevented from being changed or deleted. So that's the stuff we would use for our compliance documentation. Once again, people know I do a lot of IRS work. So a lot of those IRS documents, especially logs, you can't delete for 5 to 7 years. So would actually put the Amazon S3 object lock on it, then that would satisfy that particular requirement. See what my man Ty is asking? Oh yeah, most definitely. The APT advanced attackers use AWS. Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of times because AWS is one of the biggest cloud vendors, so they're using it to attack, and they're attacking AWS, and they're attacking it from within AWS. So 100%. Shout out to Shungo for joining us. So once again, object lock, you see that governance model there, you see that compliance mode. So that's definitely something we use, especially for logs. Logs we have to keep for a certain time frame. Um, FTI data we have to keep for a certain time frame. So we would kind of move that to Amazon S3. My apologies, and put that lock on there with the retention period. Then once again, when the auditors come down, they would ask, how are you keeping it for 7 years? How are you protecting it? So we would show that retention period inside S3 object lock. So that will be a security check / compliance check for us. Storage lens, I've never seen this used in person, but it's organization-wide visibility into your object storage, activity trends, make actionable recommendations to optimize account and apply data protection. So you see it at the bottom. Sometimes you need documentation and dashboards to what happened to some of your, I guess, classified data. You can get that using S3 storage lens. You get organization accounts, regions, and buckets. You can aggregate those metrics inside S3. You can analyze that probably using Athena. We're going to talk about that. The use case, summary insight, flag outliers, recommendation, data protection, and cost efficiency. Optimize your storage insights and recommendations surface inside storage lens. So Amazon's giving you a ton of features and a ton of services because everybody's building so much, so many applications, so many use cases on S3. Amazon's giving you a ton of features to once again generate, drill down, create reports, aggregations of who's touching your data, where's your data moving, is it FTI data, what users in your organization try to access it. Right? So those are the types of drill down trends and contextual recommendations you can get from the Lens product. So once again, S3 has completely CyberSecurity data without needing to copy load it into separate analytic platform or data warehouse. This means you can run data analytics directly from your data stored in S3. S3 is compatible with AWS analytics services such as Amazon Athena and Amazon Redshift Spectrum. Amazon Athena queries your data in the S3 without needing to extract it, load it in a separate service. You can use standard SQL expression to analyze your data, and we're going to look at parts of that and how you would do that basically from a flat file, raw data classification using Amazon S3. Once again, if you got any questions, put them in the chat. We kind of rolling through today. Like I said, I just want to start touching on some of the Amazon service, drilling down, and hopefully start doing some labs. We've been talking about that forever. Get the lab game going out. So this is the Amazon simple storage tiering, right? So you see standard frequent use, actively frequently accessing data. You get millisecond access. You get up to 3 availability zones. So if you save them in one data center, it automatically saves it in 3 data centers. The cool thing, it's 2 cents a gigabyte, right? Then the next one is intelligent tiering. We talked about that, where to keep track of it. And intelligent tiering is going to move it to the particular data classification or data frequency it needs to be in. So data with changing access pattern, up to millisecond response time. Once again, 3 availability zones. It's 2 cents up to 1 cent. Monitoring fee per object. Minimum storage duration. That's a gigabyte there. Standard AI, infrequent access. The AI is infrequent access. Once again, it's millisecond access. It's a cent per gigabyte. Retrieval fee per gigabyte. Minimum storage, minimum object size. One zone AI recreates the least accessible data. Milliseconds, you get 1 availability zone. Once again, you get 1 cent per gigabyte. You get a retrieval gigabyte fee, minimum storage duration, and minimum object. The big ones here is when it gets super cheap. When you do Glacier, instant retrieval, once again, you get millisecond access. It's a fourth of a penny, so that's not even full penny. Retrieval fee per gigabyte, minimum storage, object, minimum object size. When you get S3 flexible retrieval in Glacier, once again, you get greater than 3 availability zone. It's a third of a penny per gigabyte. You get retrieval fee per gigabyte when you pull it off. The one I like though, because a lot of times we talk about log files. Once you look at them, unless you get hacked or somebody requests them, that's where I say my log files, long-term archival data. Instead of hours, it takes hours to get back. I think that's a billionth of a penny. Retrieval fee per gigabyte, minimum storage. So you see it right there. It takes hours for you to retrieve it. I heard up to 4 or 5 hours. But a lot of times if we get hacked, we got the red team's gonna come on site. They're gonna take a couple hours. They're gonna take, because we got people flying in, right? So if you get hacked, pulling those archive files to figure out what happened, that's what we would use that for. Right. Once again, you talking about a billionth of a penny. So now you can talk about stored terabytes and petabytes, and that being a feasible fee for you. So why so many types of storage? What happened to just hot? Because no, you're right, Chris. The reason why I believe is you got so many different domains, so many different business functions. You got so many different applications. Then you got so many things from compliance. I think they were just giving it that way too. And we'll look at the question I got on Discord. I added you on there. If you don't have the money, the cheaper you can get it, right? The cheaper you would take it. So if you don't need it, and you might not never need it, and you talking about keeping a petabyte of files because the IRS told you, that long-term frequency select date and hours, that I think that's a billionth of a penny, right? So I think for those different types of data stores, they're giving you cheaper versions. So that's one reason. And now there's so many different use cases for that. But yeah, it is, what is that, 7 different tiers. So once again, what you need it for and how you need to do it. And 2 now is when you scale up with big data sites, I think they're trying to just give you as many options as possible. Here, so I'll drop the link if anybody wants to come up. That is, you're correct though. That is a lot of options. We like to have a lot of options, man. We're doing big things out here. A lot of options. So let's keep rolling. I think we're coming to an end. So I just want to touch base. So one of the use cases are if you're moving flat files around, AWS transfer, you can take those files and save them on S3, right? In case you need to run them. And like Chris said, if we don't think we're going to ever need them, if the process ran, we just need them if for some reason we have to feed them back to the process. If it's a financial transaction or tax transaction or things we have to run in order, if we can save them at a billionth of a penny, because the odds of us having to run it back, but we need to keep them for compliance sake. I want that billionth of a penny, Chris. I want that billionth of a penny. So that's kind of one of the use cases for that. Right? And I worked at a large state agency. We were moving 10,000 files a month. Right, so we had to keep some of those files at least for 90 days because in case somebody says us running it. No, you 13 minutes full. We not might make it tonight, Chris. We did that last night. Shout out to that. We did that last night. But that's just one of the use cases, and we keep going on the on S3 bucket. So just talking about some different use cases in there. So let's keep going. The part of the S3 bucket you see right there at the bottom is encrypted at rest in case somebody gets in our buckets and steals our data or somehow copies it out. But they don't have the bucket policies we talk about, the permission. On the other side, we didn't give you that. That's S3. We didn't give you the IAM role or policy to be able to get to our bucket, right? So we could block it. But somehow if a hacker gets to it and they take their files out the data, that data will be encrypted with a KMS key, and that KMS key is going to encrypt the data key. And with that data key, once again, if you stole our data from the S3 bucket, you wouldn't be able to read it. Right. So that's part of GRC stuff. And once again, we talk about that in the future, but controlling your encryption keys, controlling who gets to access your bucket, who has the AIM policy, and who's gets your be able to have access to your bucket. Let's see. Do you have a course I can take to learn? I do not. I do not. There's a ton out there, JR. I do not currently have a cybersecurity course. I do more GRC. I'm kind of supposed to be working on a GRC course. So I appreciate you, JR. Chris, can you recommend a few for him? I know we talk. And two is depend on what domain cybersecurity are you doing. Red team, which is hacking, threat hunting. Blue team, we kind of defend. Purple team is kind of application security, JR. Kind of let me know which ones you kind of wanted to jump into. Worked EBS today. That is cool. Let's see. Let's keep going. Once again, I dropped the link if anybody wants to come up. Once again, we always talk about a compliance section. So we look at the compliance version of our service we running. So you see the Amazon Simple Storage Service S3. If you're running into FedRAMP East and West Data Center, it's FedRAMP Moderate. If you're running in FedRAMP High, those data centers will be covered for compliance for those type of works. We know FedRAMP is this 800-53 in the cloud. A lot of times we're dealing with federal work, so we know we need to be running in East and West and Government High. Then we will be covered with all the compliance documentation we would need for that particular service. And once again, we show some different use cases. So we definitely want to see what compliances are applied to that. Let's see who's joining me. I think I know who it is. I think. Oh, Shungo. Shout out to Shungo. What's going on, man?
I'm doing good, Dr. PBO. How are you doing?
Trying to make it today. Trying to make it, man. Just doing a lot of AWS today. Kind of wrapping it up.
Well, it's one thing I know about you, Doctor. You don't try to do anything, you get it done.
I'll be trying, man. I'll be trying. And once again, I'm showing a quick some STIG checks, which are security checks you would need. Just showed a quick tool for AC2. People know on Tuesday we're going over the NIST 800-53 checks. So for the access control, which we did a couple weeks ago, it says the S3 bucket log needs to be enabled. So server access logging provides method to monitor network for potential cybersecurity events. The events are monitored and captured in detailed records for requests that are made for S3 bucket. Then real quick for 3.7, we just looked at that other command. S3 account level public access blocks periodic. So we need to block the access. Manage access resources in the cloud to ensure that S3 bucket cannot be publicly accessed. That means from the internet. This rule helps keep sensitive data safe from unauthorized remote users by preventing public access. So those are some of the security checks. Us as compliance people, internal auditors, external auditors, NIST, CMC, we need to do these checks because we have to validate them and put them in a poem or see if we need to fix them. So that's just a couple quick checks. And I think when I looked on there, depending on what you're configuring, it was about 100 checks for your S3 bucket. So chime in if you want to, Shungo. Yeah.
Doctor, do you have Discord?
I do not. Shout out to my man Chris. I'm in everybody's Discord. I do not. I'm in Simply Cybers. Chris, if you can you drop Simply Cybers in there and Study GRCs? So those are the two I'm in the most. So I'm easily found. So usually I'm in Simply Cybers or Study GRC. So when people need me, they just add my name. I come. It's like the back signal. So I do not have one, but those are the two I'm most in.
Okay, the reason why I asked because I wasn't aware of your channel that you was doing tonight. I didn't know you was going live. How do I find that out? Where do I get that information from?
I think if you, which YouTube kind of struggles with, if you join my YouTube channel in there, you can click the button that said notify on all events, but it's probably like 60% of times at work, but that's the best way, probably. I think Chris might start putting a schedule out for me. I think I might put my schedule on study GRC. My what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to do Tuesday at 9 and Wednesday at 6. I'm trying to make those my channel, the times that I'm gonna go live. I know Tuesday at 9 is. I'm trying to start doing it Wednesday at 6. So people know I'm gonna be on that time, so it's easier to find me.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate you, man. Chris is giving a shout out. Yep, Messer is a great start. Yep. Siphon, true. I have a GRC apprenticeship in December, but as of right now, I'm learning a lot of technical stuff like Red Hat Cloud. No, that's cool. Administrator, what do you think that apprenticeship is? Oh, yeah. Anything you could put on a resume, Fern. Hopefully, I'm saying your name correctly. Yeah. Whatever you're doing, long as you're doing it at a company and you can put it on your resume, that's worth your time and gold. Now we can talk about, are they giving you relative skills, relative experience? We could talk about that after, but two, if you're doing something real and you can put it on your resume, because that's I'm saying that's 90% of your battle, getting your first foot in the door. Then you can kind of pivot and stuff, because everybody wants you to have experience, but you need a job to get experience, right? To catch 22. So now, fair, jump on that. Yep. Appreciate you. So Shango, if you look in the chat, my man Chris put in there. I'm usually at the Simply Discord probably the most, and study our GRC. We starting to build that up. So I'm usually at Simply Cyber the most. They have a GRC is life. I kind of live in there, so I'm usually looking at stuff. Shout out to Chris. He gets my attention when he wants to. He usually add me. That's like the back signal. So I tell people just add me, and I usually come and look at it. I'm usually moving around. Also, PBO votes in video channel. Yep, I appreciate you. Let's see what my man Larry saying. Any experience with S3 and project management related issue? From when I read, most issues resolved around security aspects and cost management issue. Any experience with S3 buckets? No, I think you're 100% right. S3, more from a GRC's perspective, is misconfiguration is one of the main things, but us as a GRC person needs to be checking a configuration, which we can do using AWS config, running scans on it, manually checking it probably once a month, depending on how many buckets. Some of the big company has hundreds of buckets, thousands of buckets, but if you got a small, we try to pick a couple buckets and just go out there and to it. But the big deal is just to make sure your AWS config and your advisor runs. If there's a change on there that you're not expecting, or once again, you can lock down those changes using AWS config. So if anybody changes anything, you can actually have it email yourself, and that would take care of a lot of the misconfigurations. And we're actually I keep saying I'm gonna do a lab talking about those misconfigurations. That's part of the top, OWASP top 10 is that misconfiguration. Project management issues. I don't think it's a project management issue. I think it's not understanding the cloud. You could put system control profiles on different accounts, meaning your development staff, sometimes they build stuff and they don't realize how much money they're spending. You can say this development staff, you can spin up only a small VM, only S3 after 5 o'clock. If you haven't asked requests, we shut down the whole thing, right, to save money. So I think, and they're starting to work on that. There's things you configure to email your stuff. Once again, advisor is one thing. So you can set up, if you spend more than $100 a month, it can send you an email, so you can set those type of things up. I got those on my account, Larry, because one of my homies, I ain't gonna shout him out. He said he accidentally ran up a $5,000 bill. Somebody hacked him. He ran up his bill. So AWS tried it, but he worked with AWS, so they cut it way down. They could figure out he's been hacked. But now I'm definitely sensitive to that money feature, Larry. Yep, and proper storage classification. And let's get back. Let's look at that real quick. I think this. Oh yeah, we're going to talk about. Somebody asked me a question on Discord. We're going to drill down on that. Email, yep. What part of do you have a deal with the GRC? What part of that do you have to deal with as a GRC? Mostly just the security of an S3 bucket. Are they using encryption? And we looked at some of the things in there. Is it logging correctly? And once again, we show those AWS requirements. So it tells you what to log and how to log it. So from the GRC person, are the encryptions on correctly? Who's controlling the keys? There's probably 100 checks for S3. Are those checks on or they're taken off? So we have to make sure those secure. Let me know if I answer your question correctly. This is what somebody sent to me on Discord. Shout out to Chris. I pinged Chris on it. I think I put my man Caesar on it. I put Min on it, and I put Dwight on it. Some people I hang out with in Discord. So when I answer stuff, we have those conversations. So I put them on there. They might tell me to stop putting them on there, but when I answer stuff, I put them on there so they can see the answers. And two, sometimes they might want to chime in. So this was the question that was in Discord. It was actually in simply cyber. And I've never looked at this particular compliance check, the ENISA. I'm reviewing the minimum security measures for operators of essential services. That's what's I'm calling the insights release. There are two controls I'm wondering how you would go about to comply to. The first one is the operator creates a log creation and analysis system that mines the events recorded by the logging system installed each of the CIS in order to detect the events. The second one is pretty much the same thing. I think it's, yeah. So he said, my thoughts are either it's a SIM. It's definitely a SIM. That's it. The question is, can you afford a SIM? So my job as a GRC, I help smaller companies. I worked with a ton of small companies. I probably own 3% of 20 companies that are worth zero. Shout out to them. They couldn't afford to pay me, so they gave me 3%. So I try to, especially smaller companies. So the question is, my thoughts are either it's a SIM or a SOC team or a SOC SaaS. So that's a huge investment. That is correct. How would a SMB, small managed business company, go about to cover this? So the S3 bucket we talked about, you could create log files. We talked about using the Glacier, right? Once we do our analysis on it, it could go in Glacier and be pennies to the dollar. So what kind of use case would I set up that? Which I've actually done this in real life before for a small company, right? So this is coming from BBC. It's putting their log files in the S3 bucket. Your S3 bucket, those raw log files, you can take Amazon Athena and glue. It'll actually, and we'll look at it, take a table of that particular log file. We're going to dig down into a IIS log file to see what that looks like. Once again, we saw the events. You could take the Lambda, parse that log file, figure out if we're violating brute force, how many people got assigned a particular role, did that role get denied, right? So what security requirements are we looking for in these log files that we on the S3 bucket? So once again, you can do the application load balancer, creates in the S3 bucket, grabs your Amazon Athena, you save your query results in the S3 buckets, and that's what we're going to get ready for the auditors to look at if they come in and ask us for stuff, right? This is our poor man SIM, right? So a SIM is basically put all those log aggregates and they make all the queries easy for you to run in dashboards, right? We're not spending we ain't buying Splunk for a crazy amount of money. We create our own, right? So we take the log files from the load balancer, put them in S3 bucket. Amazon Athena creates SQL statements. We can go through those log files looking for different security requirements. We're going to look at fun. Put those into some reports, save them in S3 buckets, put them in a directory, and that will be our poor man SIM. Super cheap. So once again, I pulled down 4 requirements. Windows servers must be configured to audit account management. If that security group is successful, applying to a person. Same thing if it's a user account. Same thing if it's a failure, right? So if you get a bunch of failures, I will put that on a dashboard, right? Either we don't know what we're doing or somebody's doing wrong. Then the other time is somebody's trying to do a brute force attack, right? They got an automatic job. They found your user and they just run it through passwords. So we can say if we get 10 attempts in an hour, that's probably a brute force attack. Block that IP address from the internet, put it in our logs, and send a security team an email, right? So what would that look like using those log files? So we talking about the IS logs, put on the S3. S3 people are already putting log files, so they actually have query W3C for your extended log file format. Then at the top, that's your select statement going against your log file, and that's what we could pull back from an IIS, which is a web server log file. Shows you the date of that particular request, the time it was, how many milliseconds it took, and what it was accessing. So there's a lot of things we took. If it starts accessing and it starts taking a half a second, right? That could be an attack. Somebody's trying to move a big file or something's wrong with our system, right? So we can start writing queries and have data come off of that that's pulling from our log file we put on there. So the log file, there's basically a template for is IIS logs. HTTP status 2 means that request was successful. So if that request was successful, start pulling stuff out. We can look at the CIS URL. We should know every web page that's coming back. So if a page comes here that we don't have in our file to compare it against, somebody could be trying to do cross-site scripting attack. It might be trying to push a fake file onto our website. It might have hacked our website and doing a fake page to trap people password, right? So there's a lot of things we can start doing from a GRC and a security perspective, right? To get those, to keep that moving. I appreciate you, Shango. Thanks for joining me. Shout out to Christopher Young doing big things. I appreciate you. PBO, I keep motivated. I appreciate it. So those are some of the things. And once again, we're going to do some lives, but we could create our raw log files, right? So he said he didn't have any money. We could take the raw log files on-prem, in AWS, in Azure, even on Google. We could put that on an S3 bucket and start running queries against this, right? So, and let's go back and look at the requirements for that particular. So this was this question, right? Correlation, create a log correlation. Once we put out the log files, we don't have to pull them out on there. I would just put the most important ones. I would do the network log files, app server, web server, and probably database, right? We could talk about other log files. There's a ton of them, but those probably 3 or 4 big ones, right? So once again, log correlation means we put all those log files in one place and we could query against those. We could track the packet coming in our organization through the network, to the web server, to the app server, get inserted in the database, and that response 200 going back to the user, right? So we could create our own poor man SIM. And I've done this before, right? To check the compliance box, right? Do you have log correlation? Well, yes, we do. We have them in S3. Here's the logs. This is how we correlate them. We can query against them, right? We showed Amazon Athena with our selects. With those selects, we can look for these certain things. Of course, there'd probably be 20 of these things, but there would just be select statements we run for those log files for the day's work, right? And 2 is we can, once again, correlate it, create reports, create dashboards, and create emails to the security things for things we're looking for, right? And that's basically a SIM. Now, is it Splunk? Is Splunk easier? Could we be correlating multiple days? Well, we probably just be doing one damn correlation. You could probably go back a month. We wouldn't have that. But what we trying to do is, the question was, how could we satisfy this requirement for a poor man's SIM, basically? And that's how we would do it, and that's how we would pass the audit. Right? Remember, there's 2 things. You can be compliant and secure. You can be secure and not compliant, right? So this is more of a security compliance feature. We get a little security, right? Because we are monitoring, but it's usually for the day, and we're not getting months correlations in there, right? So those are some things we couldn't do. So let me know if that makes sense. I just kind of wanted to talk about S3, kind of using it in a different way. Once again, that was on Discord, so I probably dropped some couple PowerPoint slides in there to the guy. So let's see what my man done some SQL. Absolutely incredible how few command. Yeah, that is true. Especially now you're doing raw SQL against flat file. It's really not in a database, right? But S3 really is a database and is acting like a database. But the crazy thing is S3 to me is really a object flat file system, but you can query it like a SQL. Yeah, I think a lot of people miss that, Christopher Young. I appreciate that. I appreciate you, Chris Whitlock. So yeah, that's all I got. I'm gonna hang around for any questions. Oh, I went an hour, Chris. I was surprised we were kind of moving, but I thought that from a Discord. Once again, if you got any questions for me, you can reach out to me on Discord. And two, if it's something I think I can add value to, and when I try to add value, I try to add some. And I actually, AWS had a couple working labs for those type of reports to do. So I actually put those in Discord so the guy can look those up. I might drop him 40 slides at the end so he can check those out at a high level. So once again, I'm gonna hang out if anybody wants to come up or if anybody had any questions. Guard duty, you want guard duty next? I do have a video on guard duty, but we can definitely do guard duty. Anything else? I appreciate you. Yeah, we can do guard duty next. We can do that next Wednesday. That's kind of in my security hub, guard duty. There's about 3 or 4 things in that security hub we definitely need to touch on from that. Hopefully, I start labbing on those. But that's S3 once again from a GRC perspective, kind of more of a cybersecurity perspective. I keep saying I'm gonna start coding a little bit again. So there's a lot of things. Once again, S3 gives you a lot of features from a programming standpoint that's kind of cool and useful that you can use. And I am tired. If there's any more questions, let me check on my LinkedIn. I ain't jumped over there real quick. Let's see. I don't think I have any people on my LinkedIn, which is fine. Oop, I probably shouldn't have done that. See if I can go back. Okay. So once again, if you have any questions, you want to come up, just drop them in the chat. Just kind of going over a few things. Like I said, I'm just trying to go over some of the most used services. So from a GRC perspective, we can get an understanding of what that is and what that looks like. Shout out to my man Larry asking those good questions of what a GRC analyst would need to worry about in that particular tape. So I was just checking on my YouTube in the back office and what's going on. I appreciate you. Yep. Trying to talk people. I appreciate it. Yeah, I try to go live. Helps with my numbers. Trying to get back monetized. So that'd be my goal in 2025. I think I got 3,400 hours, so I don't think it'd take me that long. I appreciate that. Once again, hang out a little longer for any more questions. Like I said, kind of winding down on this hump day. Kind of been a long week for me. Trying to take a little PTO. So got to work on a few things. Got to do some assessments. Some other things we're going to do. Probably do a couple of those live. Just kind of talk about them, what they look like in real life. I think we kind of talk about it live, but once again, what does that look in real life? And the thing we talk about is a lot of times, most of the times, we just end up doing it in spreadsheets, which is plus and a minus. All right, spreadsheet is ubiquitous, but I think we'll be moving up. Shout out to Chris. Are we doing the CISO GRC thing tomorrow at 11? Is that tomorrow, Chris Whitlock? A beard helps, but you don't need it. You don't need it. So many heavy hitters. That is, I don't know. That's a good question. That is a good question. Uh, that's a good question. Are you doing what CISO assistant tomorrow? Chris, we like that's tomorrow at 11 my time, 12 your time. Let me know, Chris, if you're still on. I think that'd be cool. I think he's got the creators of that. So I'll probably be on there peppering them with questions tomorrow. So see what's going on. I gotta stop yawning. Long day for me. Make sure anybody looking for me. Once again, if you need me, ProfessorBlackOps at gmail.com. IR plan. Let's see. Our plans went well to the other day. Thank you for your insights. Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad that went well. You can always reach out to me if you need anything. Yeah, those are catching on. There's so many hacks and different things. People want you to have an incident response plan, test recommendations. Part of that is DR. Then if you're a big company, right, they got the emergency succession planning, depending on how big you are, right? So those kind of goes into some of the big things. A lot of people get nervous, succession plan. If I get taken out, just gonna keep rolling. But no, that's part of it. But once again, I want to appreciate everybody for joining us. I'm about to go relax a little bit. Let me know if you need me. ProfessorBlackOps at gmail.com. I want to thank everybody for joining me. Like I said, I'm trying to go live 9 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday and 6 p.m. on Wednesday. The Tuesday, 9 times out of 10, is going to be doing a NIST 800-53 video. And Wednesday, I'm saving for AWS or cloud stuff. Mostly AWS. That's my cloud. So, and two, how's that with GRC? And once again, I saw this on Discord, so I answered it. So that's where the S3 bucket came in with the different stuff. Like Chris said, you can easily do SQL statement, create your reports for the auditors, create reports that you can actually put in dashboards in a Lambda type function. Put it in System Manager to send you an email. You can actually have it take action. Once again, one of the reports is if you start getting a brute force attack, somebody tries to log an account 50 times within a minute, you can grab the IP address, go to your VPC, and block that IP address from coming into your cloud environment anymore, right? You can go on Route 53. If you run a WAF, you can actually put that IP address and block it further out from your environment. So that's when you have automation in there and start taking it to a next level. All right. But once again, I want to appreciate everybody for joining me. I'm out, Professor Black Ops. Happy hump day. Everybody has a great weekend. I think Monday's a holiday. I was surprised. So I got to check to see if I get that day off. Once again,